This is a GK 2265 Strat style guitar, which isn't a valuable or collectible instrument by any stretch of the imagination, but this model kind of marked the beginning of a very important friendship, but also played a huge part in my journey as a guitarist in a one-man band. And I bought one of these from my best friend in 2012, which replaced the Ashbury guitar, which is this one, if you're unfamiliar. And that guitar is actually the one that goes with the amp I was playing through in my last video. But to be honest, going from the Ashbury to this probably wasn't as big of an upgrade as I thought it was back then, because they're both very cheap, affordable instruments that weren't meant for professional level players, which is exactly what led to me neglecting it, having it turn into a wall hanger, forgetting about it for 7 years before it finally came back into my possession. And I was reminded of my stupidity. But we'll talk about that guitar in my next video. For today, it's this guy. And there's a few things that I want to do. One is I want to play it. I want to re-experience a mostly original parts version of this guitar. And then I want to crack it open and see if everything is in fact original, and re-experience as a more knowledgeable guitar tech and guitar player what it looks like on the inside here. And then I want to tackle some of the issues that I know that it has and see if I can't get it playing even better than it already plays. And it's like not too bad. I did play it a little bit when I brought it home. I'm trying my damnedest to set up for this, but this one Strat button is incredibly loose, and it doesn't want to tighten. It's stripped out. And this other one was over tightened so much it's actually pulled itself into the body a bit, which made getting the strap on really difficult. I need to mitigate this issue. I don't want to drop this and put more dents in it. All I'm going to do is take this little teeny piece of paper and I'm going to put it into the screw hole, which will tighten it up just enough, hopefully, to get me through this play session. And then obviously I'm going to be taking the guitar apart to take a peek at what's under the hood, and then when I'm reassembling it I will probably plug and re-drill this hole. But this is position 1, aka bridge position. Position 2. Position 3. That was a weird clacky sound. Position 4. And position 5.
Time to cut you open, motherfucker.
I'm actually really excited about this table that I built yesterday because not only does it have these flip-up guitar rests, which you already saw earlier, but I no longer have to do everything sitting down and hunching over a table. I can lift it up to standing height, and now I can stand up and hunch over things while I work. So first things first, I gotta take these strings off. Most people cut them. I'm not going to be doing that because as it stands, I don't actually have a replacement set of strings to put on here when I'm done. And I would like to be able to restring this and be able to play it still. Now I gotta get these strings out. I just pulled the 4th string out and it fish hooked the high E, I think, and pulled it through. God. Yeah, it's looped over from the high E. And now the job is to remove the neck. See if there's anything else under this neck plate. Oh my gosh. Hey, actually, that might give me a better idea what guitar this came from. Red, yellow, green, blue. It seems it's quite possible my suspicions were correct and this did come from an Ibanez gem. It was multicolored. Apparently it was like hydro dipped or something, and they were all very unique. I actually have the one that originally came on my other GK guitar, so it'll be a more complete picture. Not that it matters, it's just a piece of metal that helps hold the neck on, but you know, in terms of completion, this will be going on. Now my biggest curiosity, because it's actually been a while since I disassembled a GK, is there anything underneath the neck? Doesn't seem to be. Anyways, I'm going to set this boy aside because I have a lot of screws to deal with over here. While I'm here, I should mention that the reason that I didn't play with the whammy bar is because it should be fairly obvious, but the pickguard is like the exact size of this end here, so there's no wiggle room and it's grinding there. Not to mention the pickguard is actually sticking out into the neck pocket a little bit, which didn't seem to be causing an issue. But I will have to scrape and dial in this pickguard a little bit more. As far as I can remember, these look like the same pickups. There's no stamping on them to indicate whether or not they're the original GK ones. I am going to remove everything from the pickguard while it's still all soldered up because I don't really need to desolder anything. And at this point, I'm pretty aware that the pickguard grinding could be only part of the issue. This blade is pretty thin and fits around the center of the bridge, but right near the edges where it starts to curl over, that's when it starts to bite, and it bites pretty hard. feeling it with my finger, and oh, that's not uneven anymore. That feels good. I'm acting surprised, but I knew that would work. I've done it before. And now, just to kind of dial the surface in the rest of the way. Ooh. Razor blade fits all the way across. The corner fits down into the curved bits. And definitely fits down the side here. Good, good. This side of the bridge is flat to the body, and I mean there's like a hairline gap. Oh, this side's actually sitting flat now. It wasn't initially, but maybe it's just because it was unbalanced. After activating it a couple times, it leveled itself out. And now I just need to make sure the rest of these screws aren't like all the way tight, but are down enough that they're making the same amount of contact with the bridge that the outer two screws are. Okay, so I reassembled the guitar to test the bridge out, and before I made my adjustments, if I dived or lifted, I'd be close to 2 notes off, flat or sharp respectively. But then after making the adjustments, reassembling it and tuning it up with 2 B strings, because the E string broke, putting them back on, as I expected, happens every time. I'm now only like 10 to 15, 20 cents sharp at a maximum if I'm being extremely aggressive with it, which is a huge improvement. 10 to 15 cents is so very little compared to 2 whole notes. That's like, what, 200 cents? So I want to swap out the bridge with this one. It needs to be reassembled, but this one's got a much heavier bridge plate and a much heftier block. The whammy bar fits in this one, but it's a bit rackety, even when it's down all the way. And it actually moves a bit before the bridge starts to move, which makes the responsiveness just suck. So this one, it actually fits in nice and snug. There's no racketiness, so this will definitely be, you know, a much better responding block. The bigger plan, however, I require these 2 things for. These are cheap, not straight edge and fret rocker. That was a weird way to say that. This is a cheap notched straight edge and a cheap fret rocker from Amazon. Do not use these straight out the box when you get them. They are not flat. I will not be linking to these because they're terrible, but if you literally search for these on Amazon, they will show up from 30 different sellers. But I lapped this one, making sure that I marked it with permanent marker as I went to make sure the surfaces were flat and square, and this one is now. And the fender scale side of this one is now as well. Basically the side I need for this one. So these are flattened now, so they will be accurate. I need to do the Gibson side still, but I don't have a Gibson that I'm working on right now. Or a Gibson style one. I'm holding back a hiccup right now so bad. It's time for neck things. And this is a bag of Allen keys. I just have to find out which one is the right one. I'm pretty sure it is this one. Oh, look at that. So basically what I have to do now is make sure this neck is as straight as it can be for the fretwork. Currently it has a very slight back bow, so I'm going to be holding this up to the neck starting at the 2nd fret because that's where it wants to slot in. And looking at it, there's no light coming through the center of the board, but there is light coming up at the 2nd fret and also down at the 20th fret. So there's a slight back bow to this neck. It's ever so slight though. I doubt that I need to loosen it that much, because it's only a very slight back bow. So that's probably as good as I'm going to be able to get it. And I'm going to let it sit for like... So it's been about 30 minutes, and I checked the neck again, and it seems that rather than having a back bow, it actually has a bit of fall away after the 12th fret built into the fretboard, which means I have the neck as straight as it can be, and it's time to move on to the next step, which is taping off the fretboard to protect the wood, and then using my homemade leveling beam to even out the frets while maintaining the fall away. So I will have to level them in 2 different parts. So it's been 5 days since the last clip because I got sick with something, probably just a generic cold. And so I've been at like 10% energy and kind of looked like crap and didn't want to be on camera. But during that time, rather than resting for a majority of it, I have been working on this thing. I've made a few mistakes and fixed some issues that were pretty minor, but make me feel a lot better about it. The thing that I messed up is something I've never actually had to do before, and while I thought I was prepared enough for it, I didn't exactly have the right system to get it done properly, so I'm going to have to do it again. But I'm going to do it not for a video, because then I can focus more on doing it right and not about getting it done so I can get the video done. So going over these little things. The first thing is the strap knobs. This one I plugged and re-drilled. That went well. It's nice and tight now, and I feel way more secure about it. The end one, I've had to change out the button, because while I did have to plug and re-drill the hole, it was not sunken in the body as much as I thought it was. I didn't take that close of a look at it. So it wasn't over tightened to the point of pulling into the body. Somebody dropped it right on the strap button. Boom. So the strap button had compressed all on its own into almost a pancake with barely any room to get a strap onto it. But that also in turn compressed the wood and surprisingly didn't cause a whole bunch of lacquer to fall off. It is sunken in, but you actually almost can't even tell now with the new button on there with the felt washer. It actually kind of hides that compressed body, which is great. Obviously the button is done for. I put it in my parts box. I probably won't use it, but it's there. It's also kind of a funny topic of conversation. Look how messed up this thing is. They had to have dropped that on a really hard surface for it to compress that much. I mean, come on. So, replace that with a new one. Making sure I don't hit this guitar on something. I've moved things around, so I'm not aware of where things are anymore. So that's fixed. Both both buttons are secure. They're not loose, and they're also the largest ones that I had. So they should hold on to any of my straps fairly well, although I would like to get some strap locks or just some better straps. One of my straps is pretty good, the rest are pretty cheap. The neck is behaving fairly well. I think there actually is a bit of truss rod rattle though. Someone's gonna clip me just smacking the guitar neck for like 30 seconds. It's playing pretty good. I got pretty hefty strings on it. I figured this neck is going onto another guitar, which I will explain in a future video. Maybe not for a month or two, depending on how long it takes to prep everything I need to do that project. That's kind of been the goal for this thing the whole time, but I wanted to see if I could get this thing playing as it is. But I thought it was an opportunity to experiment a little bit with some of the random strings I have laying around from other instruments that I've gotten new strings for, are currently being repaired and will have new strings eventually. So I put the highest string, the first string of one of my bass guitars, on as the low E, and it is tuned to drop D at the moment. It was initially drop C sharp, so maybe the string gauge is a little bit more than it should be, but plays well. It's been sitting with these strings on it for 3 days and it hasn't shifted weirdly, but I kind of like it. It feels pretty cool. In terms of like other minor issues, the mounting holes for the pickguard and the backplate, some of them were stripped out, some of them felt like they were getting pretty close. So what I do sometimes is, if the hole feels like it's pretty close to being tight enough to have the screws be secure, I will just put tight bond into those holes in 2 coats. I'll put the first coat in and let it like dry till it's like soft but not sticky anymore, and then I'll put another coat on it, and I'll wait till that's a little bit past that point. And once it's like soft and malleable but it's dry, I'll very carefully put the screws in, and that kind of like establishes threads in the glue. So when the glue has hardened, you know, it's now a much more solid thread for the screw to bite into, but also glues like tight bond and stuff, and especially with the softer woods like this body's made out of, the wood swells slightly, so it also kind of tightens up the screw hole as well. And doesn't always work. Sometimes the holes are so stripped out you have to plug and re-drill, like this one. This one, I tried that, didn't work, so I just, you know, drilled it out, plugged it, drilled it again. Drilled it out to get the old glue out, make sure I had some solid surfaces to glue a piece of dowel to, and then I drilled out. But the rest of them, the pickguard holes and the backplate holes, other than where the black screw is right now, because of course I lost one of them, which is actually a much smaller screw, it all worked out. It's like, these are my instruments. I don't see a problem with just putting glue into the screw hole, waiting until it's soft but dry, and then creating threads in the glue. It's fine. Or just letting the wood swell up a bit so that the screw has a bit more bite. No one cares. But that is what I did. Now the big issue, which is where I messed up big time, is after replacing the saddles on this bridge, which I did do. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier, but I did replace the saddles with ones that were slightly shorter on the back, which gave me a little bit more room to pull them back farther, which is great. I noticed that some of the mounting holes, mostly going towards the bass side, for these screws here, the screws were leaning forward quite a bit, creating more of an oval-shaped hole, which would explain why there was so much clearance issue between the pickguard and the bridge. And I hadn't actually taken the bridge off completely and paid that much attention to those mounting holes. I noticed that there was lacquer chipped out around them, but I assumed that was pretty normal on a cheap instrument. The tolerances probably weren't perfect, and this bridge rocking back and forth on it probably caused it to crack. But once I took material off the pickguard twice, just a little bit to create more clearance, I noticed that the bridge was still pushing against the pickguard, which made no sense to me because I had removed material twice. So I took a little bit of a closer look at the bridge and realized that some of the holes, mostly on the base side, but all of them were kind of tipped forward and made to be more of an oval. So I was like, well, the only solution to this is to plug these holes and re-drill them. But I've never had to do that with a bridge like this before, so I didn't really have a positioning system in place to do that. And so it, as you would expect, went horribly. And I actually had to plug and re-drill them twice. And it has resulted in the bridge being slightly not aligned properly. As you can see, based on the high E here, it's off to the side. I mean, I can still play it. I usually bend down anyway. So it's fine. It's playable, but it doesn't look good. It's very off kilter. So I have some work to do to position it more properly. But I'm not sure if I've shifted the bridge off. I think I have actually shifted the bridge off to the side a little bit too much. But it's also tilted. So I have mistakes to fix. This isn't being sold to anybody. I'm keeping this guitar body and neck. None of the instruments that I have right now will ever be sold to anybody. A lot of them are sentimental. Actually, most of them are sentimental. Other ones are guitars that have kind of been on the bucket list for a while. They're cheap. They were affordable and in horrible shape. But they looked like the guitars that I wanted as like an end goal guitar. This one's not necessarily one of them, but to have a non-water damaged GK guitar body to experiment on and turn into something really cool is awesome. And I never thought I'd want a silver guitar, but it's pretty cool. But overall, the guitar's together. It does play. It sounds pretty good considering it's all very stock other than the string gauge. And it's all very cheap stock as well. I've already gone over everything I improved about it. I'm repeating myself at this point. And I will record a little bit of me playing this guitar for a bit, but because I am still technically sick, I don't have the energy to go full-fledged, let's write a whole song. And that's honestly biting off way more than I should for a video like this. But you get to at least see it and hear it playing. You'll be getting direct recording from this boy, which is the same one I started this video off with. And without further ado, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff from an idiot like me. And this has been the Vera Cascale. You've been incredible. My brain doesn't work. Reach for the stars and stuff. Here's some guitar playing, gosh. I'm having too much fun.